my space, my virtual space, once more. This evening we are continuing with Who's the Voice? It is Thursday, is it? Yes. It's already the end of June. And what an exciting time we've been having. And I know for us who have been missing out on fellowships and trying to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, I know that we are eager to get back out to our assemblies and our houses of worship and to really establish that camaraderie and that brotherly love. But when we go back out, we are still faced with the issues of that we had before. We're still faced with issues that needs addressing. We are still looking at the whole issue of choice, and we have decisions. We are still looking at what to do, when to do, and of course, we're still trying to make sure that we live. So, in it all, we need to hear God. To put it simply, that and we need to hear the Father by the Spirit, through the Spirit, in the Spirit. This evening, I want to continue talking about this relationship between you and He, the voice. We have really, really come to that place where we establish that He is the voice. We are thankful that He continues to be that voice and continues to establish that God is that voice. Now, when we think about God as a voice, we must realize that once He is speaking, it means that we are hearing. We are also seeing that once we are hearing, it is to realize what is being said. Now, we have looked at this before in terms of what is being said and what we are hearing, maybe two different things. We know that we hear, through the seeds of our cultures and traditions and belief systems, whether the belief systems are traditional, whether they're cultural, whether they're biblical, and I may even add spiritual, because one realizes from our environment and from our past that there are a lot of things we believe that came out of a generational and ancestral context. So it's a little more than just cultural. We recognize that ethnicity has also put us in a place where it has coined belief systems. Now, as I said, we would have spoken about this before, but I thought I'd revisit it, and then carry a little bit further with why I want to bring it back today. It's important for us to know that as we live daily, we are being directed. And I'm not sure that the child of God or the believer in Christ is totally convinced that there is a connectivity between their decision making and the Holy Spirit. And I put it in that way because even though we say He is Lord and He is in charge of us, I am not too sure that we are cognizant of the Lordship on a 24/7 basis. I'm not sure that we are very much aware, or let me use that word that I used before, conscious about the fact that we are His, and we need to hear Him. So let's see if we can work a little bit today, because as we go on, minute by minute, hour by hour, my doings, am I convinced that the Lord is? Am I convinced that the Lord does things with my very day, my washing, my cooking, my cleaning, my working, my playing, my grocery shopping, any kind of activity, or rather, I should say, every activity, is he in it? Now, if he's in me and I'm in him, therefore, when I live and move, I have my being through the Spirit. And so, therefore, the Spirit is very in my being. Am I aware that when I have a thought, that thought needs to be translated, or I need to define that thought in context of the Spirit? Do I realize that? Do I realize that I do have the mind of Christ? Or maybe I ought to have the mind of Christ? Or basically, I have the mind of the Spirit. And therefore, though these terms I just used there are in the scriptures. We could find them in Colossians, we could find Philippians, we can find them in Ephesians. The mind, the spirit, the mind of Christ. So we are to be aware of that. Now, if I have that mind, therefore there is a relationship going on between me and He, the Holy Spirit. Therefore, it means that I'm hearing His voice and we are having dialogue. We are having dialogue. We are working together with His voice and me. We are working together with His voice and who I am. We're working together. Are we working together? Yes, we are. We're working together, are we? Yes, we are. We must be working together. Because if I have His mind and He's speaking, for me to do, there must be a relationship going on there for me to do. Is that right? That is right, is it? For me to do. So it's important. It's important that we work this thing together. It's important. It's important. How important is this? You think it's important? It's important. Very important. Most important. And I want you to see that that's important. I don't know why I'm so excited. I'm trying to cool my excitement. It's so important that we have to get into the understanding of me having Him give direction daily. It's important for that. And why I keep using that word? Because I want us to prioritize it as something that is necessary for me to take note of. Because when things are important, I take note of it. I am very aware of what it is. And I want us to take note of what's happening here. I want us to take note of how we are to work this mind. Now, as I said, I am aware, I'm repeating myself here again, that we had some conversations about this. But it's necessary to bring it back to, because I'm realizing, coming out of COVID-19, which has been a world experience, as a believer, what we have done in the COVID-19 experience, the Lord would have spoken to you, but it would seem that He's speaking to you through your national voices, the government, the prime ministers, the presidents of our nations. And we had to do everything accordingly. And if you didn't do those things, it was like if you were going against your nation, even though some of those things would have been like against God. Because these things were not planned at all, in terms of 2020. We didn't sit down in 2020 in January or even 2019 and plan these things. No. We didn't plan to be indoors. We had a list of that is called itinerary. We had a long list of activities and ministries and speaking engagements and all these things. All of a sudden, one pandemic changed that. Now that we are going back out, what are we hearing? How are we hearing? And so that it's important for me to see that I do have the mind of Christ. So how do I reconcile having the mind of Christ, but shut down by a pandemic, and then I have to hear God per se in what I do then and how I did this thing, and I just accept it was God. And now that I'm going back out, am I going to hear God the same way I heard God for the last 3 months? I know, I must be an advocate of something else, haven't I? But I want us to be aware that for the next couple of weeks, as we go back out, we are going to be working out even here. There's some people who are affected in terms of where they're going back out and how. And there's some people who are recognizing that the things that they did during COVID-19 that they did without, can they still do without? So that for some people, that what they experienced during COVID-19, they want to keep that. Whatever it is. Your time home, your time out, the lack, the sleep, the work hours, the work schedules, business went on. But what did we have that we should change or we should not maintain? What did we have before that we really need to throw away and say, hey, should we start afresh? Now, I want you to know that in all this, God is. How do we define God is? And it's important for that. So therefore, today, my reality here is bringing understanding of the God that we serve, the God of our very existence, that we say He is Lord, is capable of handling our future without condemnation and without guilt. Because it is easy to find ourselves wondering when we are faced with certain decisions and certain ideas and plans, that we have to remember that those plans still have the capacity of a sudden change. Those plans still have capacity of difference. So therefore, if I could have hold on to those differences in March, April, if I plan for June, for July, August, September, and something is changing, could I be of a different behavior? Or could I show a different response, knowing that God still is? Because see, if that voice is speaking to me, I am subjected to that voice. But in that subjection to that voice, there are other dynamics that are very real. The government, for instance, the laws and bylaws, they change them and we have to change. The way we drive, the way we eat, the way we live, the way we pay taxes. And I would seem to be driven by what is Caesar's is Caesar's and what is the Lord is the Lord's. And do we realize that on both sides of the coin, they may be different, but it's one coin. And God, therefore, is pleased with us to have that coin. So that when He speaks, is He therefore speaking from both sides of the coin? Or is He speaking for us to make sure that we understand how to work the coin from both sides? And I want us to be real about this. I want us to understand that when God is speaking to us, He that had an ear, yes, let him hear. And He's speaking to us as we are citizens of a particular nation, yet we are very primary citizens of the kingdom. So when we look at that kingdom come that will be done on earth as it's in heaven, how do we work that out with the pandemic? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done right here. So that is this part of the kingdom coming to bring a revelation of that which is in heaven? And how do we respond to that in terms of who we are as believers in Christ Jesus in this earth? So thy will be done where? Thy will be done here. We have to work on that will. And that will is worked out by hearing God. So that our steps are ordered. Yes, our steps are ordered. So with pandemic, your steps are ordered to stay home. Your steps are ordered to go nowhere. And it was not that God was saying don't go nowhere. It was a national context. And you didn't give that directive. You received it. So it was not God saying, it was you responding to. So how do we live now? And so many other dynamics in our future. So many paradigms that may shift because of, let's say, climate change, for instance. We have the hurricane season ahead of us. There are many things you plan, but you just cannot do anymore because of the rain. A storm may come. Did you sit down and plan? Oh, storm! Did God tell you that? Did God tell you there was a plan? Did God say in January this or in February or in March or in April? What God says is always something that is worthy of doing without any care. He doesn't tell us calamities. He doesn't seem to tell us illness. He doesn't seem to tell us about storms. He doesn't seem to, one doesn't get it. And for me, it wasn't that God said to me, hey, there's going to be a pandemic in between April and June. You have a different life. No, he didn't. But what he was doing is getting me ready in some way for the transition. For instance, I was getting me ready to use a laptop and to use the platforms of Zoom or YouTube or Periscope. He was getting me ready, transitioning me all the time because it's something that I would not have liked. But he had me on the platforms since 2018, getting me ready and working me. And even though I was there, the aggression I may have used in terms of fine tuning, maybe I didn't do it enough. Because I leaned back into a perspective of, this is only for, rather this is going to be a very needed aspect of my life. You wondered about travel, and there was ambivalence. Should I not? Maybe I should. Let's not. But on the other hand, we did plan to go somewhere. So that we have to be careful how we assess our hearing and how we assess what we do when we do, and how we therefore judge ourselves and judge our communities in the context of hearing God. I think it's important that when God is speaking, that there is the understanding that there is definitely context. And when he's dealing with anything that is negative or positive in your perception, there is always the need for us to establish that he has an objectivity of wholeness, an objectivity where you please him as yourself is to be pleased. So therefore, it's important for you to work out your salvation in this way, that from now on, let me be careful how I judge time and space, because God is. God is speaking, and God is able to put me in different spheres, but as I go along, therefore, I need to define who he is, rather than sit back and say, he's speaking down here. So that a prophetic word may have a different interpretation now in terms of time and space. Your day is going to have a much more importance to God. Your day will have a more great connectivity with his voice, because you are not too sure what's happening out there, but you are to be assured that your feet are ordered and that you are pleasing the Lord. So let's see how we can work this. So as we go along in our July, August, as we re-enter, as I said, our houses of worship, as we re-enter our programs, we have to remember to hear what he's saying for the now, because it's going to be different in terms of the reality of how we do things and why we do things, because still we are faced with protocols that we did not make, that we do not know, we may say God never made. But yet, we are to work that because there are laws in our land that we want to contain as to establish a proper reflection of the Christ who is in us. We are examples, and we are favorable with man. We are to find that favor with God and with man. And that is where we end today. That is where I want you to recognize that in all of this, favor with God and man. So therefore, it's in the hearing of God we establish that favor with God. And you can find that in Luke 2, that Jesus Christ grew in stature and in favor with God and man. It's important for us. So as we go along, we realize that on both sides of the coin, there may be one sees his face, the other doesn't have it. And he says, render the Caesar what is Caesar, render to God what is God's. It is a matter of favor with God and man. And so therefore, we are not to look at these protocols as institutionalizing us against God or bringing us into a place where God is not, and to misunderstand God. We are to work it. And there's some things that may be said that you will do, that you know, and you will know as you hear, as you relate with God, hey, I do not do this. I should do this. And he would lead you accordingly. He would lead. L-E-A-D, he would lead you. Do not fuss about the leader. We recognize that there are parameters that we're working on. God and man. Working on favor. And as we work on favor first with God, man becomes readily responsive and receptive to who God is. So even in the protocols of your readjusted COVID-19, we have to see how God is bringing a testimony to the earth and a testimony for the world, so that the church gets a testimony of his greatness, but the world gets a great testimony of his sacrifice and his love for them, and they're able to cry out, Jesus Christ is Lord. So let's continue to work out the hearing, remembering that he is working through these seas of cultural traditions. He's working through these seas of spiritualities and religious practices, all the beliefs, but you have to come down to what he is. They may be seas, but you cannot have a justification of all of what you do by all those things. Your justification is in the Lordship of Christ. So therefore, we are hearing, and in this hearing, he's bringing us out of all these dynamics into a place where we are going to be pure in true holiness. So let's release ourselves from what we think is and what we think is. Let's release ourselves from all the ancestral and generational issues. Let's release ourselves from the thoughts that trap us into what I do and what I don't like, because we are gods. The key thing is that on both sides of the coin, there's a God and there's Caesar. So as you render to Caesar what Caesar's, render to God what is God, remember, it is he who pleases the Father. Remember, it is he who establishes the Father in his name. So, have the mind of Christ. Favor, you'll increase in stature. Favor with God.